Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Sport Manitoba Mental Performance and Sports Psychology presentations. My name is Chantal Van Landeghem, and I'm a 2016 Rio Olympian in the sport of swimming. I'm currently retired, and I'm getting my PhD in clinical psychology at the University of Manitoba. That's with an emphasis in sport. Thanks for joining us. I'm really excited about today's topic and today's presentation, managing stress and anxiety. This is a question I get asked all the time in my experience working with everyone from local athletes to international and professional athletes. I think that if you are a human, then you need to learn or you will experience some form of stress and anxiety, whether it be in sport or in life. And so I really love this topic just because, again, it's such a common concern that I hear, Chantal, how do I get rid of my anxiety? How do I manage and cope with my pre-race nerves and stress? So I hope you guys take something away. I hope that today's presentation gives you all some tools and some strategies to help you manage and cope with your stress and anxiety. So let's go ahead and get started. The one thing I'll say as well, just like in our first presentation, what I'd really recommend for you guys to get the most out of these presentations is to have your workbook open beside you or open up on your laptop. I'm going to prompt you to pause this presentation at certain points and to jot down some notes, jot down some ideas. And when you're done that, you can unpause the video and we'll continue through. So to begin with, I just wanted to start with a simple question, and that is, what is stress? And stress is simply, it's a feeling of emotional and physical tension. Now, when we have performance anxiety or pre-race nerves, pre-competition jitters, it's really similar to something called stage fright. And what happens is that our fight or flight mechanism kicks in, and this can lead to performing poorer than we expected, given our skill level. And again, it's thanks to this anxiety that's really produced in the heat of the moment. Any situation where we want to perform our best and we're worried about our ability to do so can create performance anxiety. Our body reacts to this situation in much the same way as it would if we were being attacked. So our body's fight or flight mechanism kicks in, and we experience symptoms of stage fright or performance anxiety that are similar to symptoms that would occur if we were in real danger. So these symptoms can include any of the following: shallow breathing, increased heart rate, muscle tension, sweating, negative or racing thoughts, and difficulties focusing. Now, our fight or flight mechanism, it comes from an evolutionary standpoint, and it's really helpful in certain situations. But I think what happens often for humans and for athletes in general is that our fight or flight mechanism kicks in maybe when we don't really need it. But something that I like to show when I talk about stress and when I talk about anxiety is this graph here. It's very common. You've likely seen it before. If you haven't, it's called the Yerkes-Dodson law. And what science and what research has told us is that we actually need a certain amount of stress in order to perform optimally. If you can imagine, for example, walking in on the day of a math exam, and you walk in, you show up a couple minutes late, you're feeling tired, you're feeling lethargic, you also just don't really care. My bet is that you're likely not going to perform well on that math test. Similarly, if you're showing up for a swim competition or a soccer game or a hockey game, and you show up and you're bored, you're feeling down, you're tired, you don't really care, you've got no stress, my guess and my bet is that you're not going to perform as well as you can. On the flip side of things, there is such a thing as, a little bit too much stress, too much anxiety, and that's when we see performance really starting to be hindered. But there is some stress is a good thing. And I say that because for me as an athlete, that was important to realize that it was okay to be nervous, which leads me to this next slide here. I love this quote. It's by Sidney Crosby. I don't think you're human if you don't get nervous. So what I want us to do is I want us to open up our workbooks and fill out activity 1. So I want you guys to think about what stresses you out in life and in sport. Awareness of what stresses us out is really the first step in learning how to manage and cope with it, as well as thinking about how you typically respond to that stress. So for instance, in sport, I always got nervous right before competition. In fact, I swam competitively for 18 years and never once was I not nervous before a race. I would have a racing heart and butterflies in my stomach and I'd start sweating. And for a while, how I would typically respond to that was one of 2 ways. I would either try to shove it down and ignore it and suppress it and try to convince myself by lying to myself that I was okay, or I'd become really freaked out by it. And what I would do is, if we could put a microphone into Chantal's brain right before competition, what would happen is I would say, oh my God, I'm so nervous. There's no way I can swim fast if I'm this nervous. It's impossible. Oh my God. And now I'm stressing out about being nervous. This is no good. This is terribly wrong. There's just no way I'm going to swim fast today. And I got sucked in this anxiety tornado where I started feeling anxious about my own anxiety. What I eventually learned to do was actually embrace it. And I had this mantra towards the end of my career, was that it's okay to be nervous. And I really believe it. Both that graph and this quote really helped reinforce this idea in me that it's okay for me to be nervous before a race. In fact, it was likely inevitable in my case. That was just the way my body physiologically responded to the extreme stress and high pressure of high performance sport. So it was okay to be nervous. I needed some nerves in order to perform well, and it was likely inevitable. As I said, I swam for 18 years and I was never not nervous before a race. So I told myself it was okay to be nervous and I tried to embrace it. When I say embrace it, what I mean is that I laid out the welcome mat to my anxiety. And it's an ironic thing. Once we welcome those uncomfortable feelings with open arms, what happens is that they actually have a little bit less power and less control over us. They go away quicker, they're less intense, and they're less scary. And so for me, at least, that was really helpful. But what I would like you guys to do is pause this video now and take a couple moments to reflect on what stresses you out in life and in sport, and then thinking about how you typically respond to it. When you guys are back, we'll continue on. And what I'm going to talk about next is something called a high performance state. I love this concept in sports psychology. It was so helpful for me to learn as an athlete. And it gave me a sense of empowerment over my performance. The idea behind a high performance state is that you ask yourself one question, essentially. Who do I want to be before competition? Who do I want to be stepping up to the starting line, or walking out onto the field, or skating out onto the ice, or lining up behind the starting blocks and swimming? Who do I want to be? What do I want my body to feel like physically? What do I want to be thinking about mentally? Who do I want to be to give myself the best chance at performing well? And once we have an idea of that, we can actually use tools and strategies to get us into our high performance state every single time before competition, to give ourselves the best chance of succeeding every single time. So on the graph in your workbook, what I want you guys to do is I want you to indicate where your high performance state is with an X. The horizontal axis represents our mental state. So that's from negative to positive. And the vertical axis represents our physical state. So at the top, we have pumped up, energized, and on the bottom, we have chill, calm, being a cool cucumber. There's no right or wrong answer, and everyone's high performance state is going to be different. So if you were like me, I performed my best when I was really highly energized and I was super positive. So your X might be somewhere in the top right-hand quadrant. In fact, I was almost the annoying kid on the pool deck, and that I'd be dancing and laughing and singing and joking with my friends and really just having fun. And when I brought that person, that form of myself behind the block, someone who was having fun and who was excited and who was positive and happy and totally pumped up and ready to go, that's when I swam my best. I've worked with some divers who are in the bottom right-hand quadrant here. So they're standing on the 10-meter diving board and they're looking down and they want to be positive, but they want to be super calm, super relaxed, and very just physiologically chilled out. And I think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of divers when they're hurtling themselves through the air. I've also worked with some hockey players who are in the top left-hand quadrant here. So they're sitting on the bench and they're getting ready to go on for their shift. And their high performance state, their chance at giving their best performance happens when they're pumped up, energized, ready to go, and they're angry. They actually want to get themselves mad. And that gives them the best chance to go out and body check someone really well. So again, there's no right or wrong answer here. And if you don't know where your high performance state is, that's okay too. What I would suggest if that's the case is to just reflect on some of your best performances so far in sport. And think about what you were feeling like right beforehand. And think about what you were feeling like, what you were thinking about right beforehand. And this is something moving forward that you can be reflecting on as well. If you want to try certain things and see how it works or how it doesn't work for you. So in your book, once you place the X on where you think your high performance state might be, I want you to explain in detail what that looks like, what that feels like physically, and what you're thinking about in that state. So take a moment to pause this video now and come back when you've done that. We're going to move on now. As I've alluded to, once you guys know where your high performance state is, I just think this is the coolest thing. We can intentionally and purposely get ourselves there whenever we want, every single time before competition. And I don't know, as an athlete, there was something really empowering about that, about knowing that I had the ability and it was in my control to get myself in my high performance state. It was something that was really helpful in managing my nerves and managing my anxiety, was knowing that, hey, I'm in my high performance state. I am giving myself the best chance of succeeding right now. I think that's pretty cool. So what happens if you're too low on the graph vertically? What happens if you walk in and you don't have enough energy, you're feeling tired, you're feeling lethargic, and you need to increase some of that stress and some of that arousal? We can do that both physically and mentally. So physically, for example, you could do jumping jacks or do some dryland activation. As I said, for me, that was like dancing on the pool deck. And towards the end of my career, I actually took caffeine pills. And that was specifically to increase my stress and my arousal to get into my high performance zone. I will caution you, and I would strongly recommend only doing that with the support and guidance of a coach and a nutritionist, and practicing it in practice first before doing that in a competition. It took me over a year to sort of perfect when I took the caffeine pills and how much I wanted to take. But that was a way for me to really artificially increase my stress and arousal. And then we can do it mentally as well. So we can listen to upbeat music to get us aroused and stressed, and get us awake and pumped up and ready to go, or watch. We can watch really inspiring videos that help us get jacked up and pumped up. So what I want you guys to do is make a list, jot down 1 or 2 physical and mental techniques that either you currently use or you'd like to try, to get pumped when you're feeling underactivated or you're feeling like you're below your high performance state. So take a moment, pause this video, jot down 1 or 2 ideas. What happens if we need to decrease stress and arousal? This is, I think, a more common common situation athletes find themselves in is that they're over aroused. So they're above their high performance state vertically, and they need to come down a little bit to get in there, to get in that high performance zone. So physically, there's a lot of different things I think we can do. Relaxed breathing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that might look like in the next slide. Practicing some mindfulness. I guess that could be considered physical or mental, really, depending on how you're looking at it. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on in today's presentation as well. Or things like stretching. I don't know. I think there's a lot of really creative ways to bring us down physically. And you guys likely have some strategies already that you use and that you know work. There's a lot of things we can do mentally as well. So you can do some imagining or some visualization, yourself lying on a beach, for example. You can listen to really calming music. Maybe you want to talk to your coach or to some friends, and that's a really nice way to decrease some of that stress and some of that anxiety. So again, I want you guys to jot down 1 or 2 ideas, either things that you already do or things that you'd like to try to help decrease your stress when you're feeling like you're overstressed and you're above that high performance zone. When we're back, what I'd like to do is take you through, or just explain at least, a form of relaxed breathing that I used as an athlete and that I currently use with a lot of the athletes that I work with. And there's a really nice section in the book, actually, that outlines how to do this. And it's called relaxed diaphragmatic breathing, or essentially just belly breathing for short. What happens is when we're in that fight or flight zone, when that mechanism is kicking in, it's releasing adrenaline into the body and it's releasing cortisol, which is the main stress hormone. And what happens when we're in fight or flight, or we have performance anxiety, or we have that pre-competition nerves and stress, we start breathing from our upper chest. And that's a way to maintain the fight or flight system. It's a way to get oxygen to the muscles quickly in order to help us, fight a bear if it comes along, or to flee it. But what we want to do in order to calm that fight or flight system, decrease our stress, decrease our anxiety, is actually breathe in through our lower belly. So in this picture here, the woman has a hand on her upper chest and a hand on her upper belly. And what I want you guys to practice right now is when you take a nice inhale, a nice relaxed inhale through your nose, see if you can push out your lower belly as if it's being inflated like a balloon. So when you breathe in, that lower belly is expanding. And then when you breathe out, that lower belly is coming back in. And really what we're focusing on here, it doesn't necessarily have to be deep breathing, but I want it to be relaxed and I want it to be slow. So if you're breathing in for about 2 or 3 seconds, whatever you're breathing in for, see if you can exhale for longer. That's really going to help physiologically signal to the body and to the brain, I'm safe. And what that does is that quiets the fight or flight system, and it allows us to enter into a more relaxed state. What I recommend is trying this, practicing for 5 to 10 minutes a day. If you're not sure, if you're having trouble really breathing from that lower belly, a nice strategy is actually to lie down flat on the floor on our backs and put a textbook or put a book on your belly and see if you can move that textbook up and down as you breathe. That's a nice way to get some like somatic feedback about whether you're breathing through the lower belly or not. And again, I think we need to practice this, because if we don't practice and then all of a sudden we're in a stressful situation and we try to belly breathe, it's not going to work. We have to practice it just like any other skill in order to make it a skill and in order to make it a habit, just like we would do with anything else. So again, I highly, highly recommend this strategy. Not only did I use it in sport, but I use it in my day-to-day life. If I ever get nervous before, a speaking engagement or right before an exam or a test, I personally feel the effects of belly breathing within a matter of minutes, and I physiologically can feel my body start to relax. And it's a lovely, lovely way to bring ourselves into our high performance zone if we need to decrease some of that stress and some of that arousal. Finally, this is another one that athletes commonly struggle with, is feelings of self-doubt or being afraid, fearing failure right before a competition. And so I think this is an important thing to think about, is how we can increase positive thoughts and emotions if that's, where you want to be, or if you find yourself to the left of your high performance state. So some physical things, for example, high-fiving a friend, giving someone a hug. Something that I did, I'll tell a little story to give you the context for what I did to help increase my positive thoughts and emotions. I started doing this ever since I missed making the 2012 Olympic team by 0.01 seconds. And when I was standing behind the blocks, trying to get on those 2012 Olympic teams, I was so nervous. I was sweating, I was shaking, but I really wasn't having fun. I was so afraid to fail in that moment. And what I did when I didn't make the Olympic team, and by that, heartbreakingly small of an amount, 0.01 seconds, I asked myself, when I was deciding, well, do I want to keep swimming for another 4 years? I asked myself, well, why do you swim in the first place? What's the purpose? And my answer was super simple. I swam because I loved it and I had fun and I was passionate about it. But what I realized is behind the blocks for the 2012 Olympic trials, I wasn't having fun and I wasn't loving it. So ever since that event, what happens in swimming is they call every person's name behind the block. So they might say, in lane 3 from Canada, Chantal Van Landegem. And at every competition after not making the Olympic team in 2012, when they called my name behind the blocks, I smiled. And sometimes I had to force that smile, but I smiled. And for me, just the simple act of smiling was the reminder to myself to have fun and to enjoy the moment. In fact, research actually shows, and I didn't know this at the time, but it helps me understand why it worked as well. But research shows us that when we force people to artificially smile, for example, by holding a pen in between their lips and their nose, I can't even do it, but what happens is that they subjectively, without even realizing they're smiling, but when we force that smile position on their face, they subjectively start to feel more positive. They rate their mood as better after doing it. So even if you don't feel it, sometimes faking it till you make it, in a sense. And I think that's what I did with the smiling, is sometimes it came organically and sometimes I had to force it, but it really helped remind myself to have fun and to enjoy it. And then there's the mental side of things. So, thinking about past successes, or thinking about all the hard work that you've put in, or having some really nice mantras to say to yourself. One thing I would recommend here, and when you're filling this out, is I would not include what you don't want to think about. Humans, we have, our minds sort of have a will of their own. And I guess what I'm trying to say is we can't control what we think about sometimes. So for example, let me show you guys something. So for the next couple seconds, whatever you do, I don't want you to think about what I'm about to say. Okay? So I'm going to say something. Don't think about this. Don't think about a pink elephant. How did you guys do? I don't know about you guys, but as soon as I said it, even when I was building it up, the first thing that popped into my mind was a cute cartoon pink elephant. And I was like, dang. So that's not going to work. It's not going to work. The more we tell ourselves not to think about something, that thing is the thing that's going to come into our head. So what I want to suggest, if you do find it hard to control some of those negative thoughts, whatever your pink elephant might be, I want to introduce something called the hello goodbye technique, which I find is really helpful, again, in trying to just manage some of those negative thoughts because we can't control them. But what we can do is we can say hello to it. So we acknowledge it in our brain, we're aware of it, and then we sort of just gently let it out as if it's clouds floating by. So instead of ruminating about it or getting mad at ourselves for thinking about something we don't want to be thinking about, we say hello, we say goodbye, and then we think about whatever we want to be thinking about. So if I have the thought that, oh man, I don't think I'm going to swim well today. I'm doubting myself. I don't think I'm going to swim fast. I would say, okay, I'm going to say hello to that thought. And now I'm going to say goodbye to it. And what I want to be thinking about is all the training that I've put in for the past couple months leading up to this event. And I want to also be thinking about the fact that I love competing and I love racing and that it's really fun. So when you guys pause this video and you jot down a couple ideas in the physical and the mental, jot down what you want to be thinking about in the mental. Jot down something you can say to yourself, a positive mantra or an image, or again, a past success, because it can be hard to think of that stuff in the moment. So it's going to be really helpful to brainstorm things that you want to be saying to yourself now, and then to practice that. Again, all of this, really, the more we can practice it at home, the more likely it's going to just be a habit, and it's going to be easier to do in a high stress and high pressure situation. So pause this now, fill this out, and then come on back when you guys are done. I'd like to end today's presentation a little bit on the topic of mindfulness. I love mindfulness. I am passionate about it, and I'm a big believer in the benefits of it, both for athletes and just for humans in general. If you haven't heard of the term before, mindfulness is essentially just the ability to be fully present and aware of where we are and what we're doing and what we're thinking and what we're feeling, and not to overly react or be overwhelmed by what's going on around us. I think what happens a lot of the time is humans are great time travelers in our minds. We are either thinking about something we did earlier in the day, or we're thinking about what we want to do tomorrow or what we want to eat for dinner. But the wild thing about mindfulness is that the only time we are actually alive and living is right now, in this moment. And a lot of the time what happens is that when we think about the past, maybe you're thinking about, a bad performance or a poor race, or oh, I wish I wouldn't have said that to my friends. Often that elicits feelings of sadness or depression, or it kind of makes us feel down. On the opposite hand, sometimes when we think about the future, so an upcoming competition, an upcoming race, an upcoming practice that we really want to perform well at, a test for school that we have to take tomorrow, that's when we feel nervous and anxious. So really, by being in the present, in this moment, in the here and now, it can help us combat those feelings of sadness and those feelings of anxiety. And I think that's a really cool thing. So there's a couple questions in your workbook that I want to get you guys to reflect on and to think about. It's really easy to feel overwhelmed if we think about all of the things we have to do. And so I believe it's really important to try to stay present and in the moment and focused on the task at hand. So one of the questions I want you guys to think about is what technique you could use to bring yourself into the present, to focus on the task at hand and to stay mindful. I think the belly breathing is a really nice tool that you guys can try. Another tool that I'll give you is something that I've used with athletes as well. And it's called the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. And so if we're finding that we're particularly distracted, or we're having trouble concentrating, we're having trouble focusing or being mindful, what I would encourage you guys to do is use your senses to bring you into the present. So what are 5 things that you guys can see? What are 4 things that you guys can hear? What are 3 things that you guys can feel? So for example, right now, I can feel my chair against my back and against my legs. What are two things that you guys can smell? And finally, what's one thing that you guys can taste? And sometimes that taste one is a little bit tricky. And so if you can't taste anything, what I like to substitute that with is one positive thing you can say to yourself, or, asking yourself, what do I need to hear in this moment? So that's a really nice strategy when we're feeling particularly anxious and stressed out to bring us into the moment. So I would recommend trying that as well and seeing how it goes. What I also want you guys to reflect on are some specific situations where you think it would be especially important for you to remind yourself to be mindful and to focus on the present. So for example, high pressure situations, or when you're feeling exhausted, when you feel like quitting, when you're faced with a challenge. These are all situations where mindfulness can really be an asset in helping us stay motivated and staying focused on the task at hand. And then finally, I want you guys to jot down some simple tasks, ideas, or thoughts that you can focus on before and or during a performance to maintain perspective and to stay mindful. So as I've said a bunch of times already, one of my mantras was, it's okay to be nervous. And that was something that I would often repeat over and over to myself right before a race. During a race, I like to focus on my technique, because that was something that helped me stay mindful, focus on the task at hand, and it was also in my control. So take a moment now, pause this video. I want you guys to jot down a couple ideas for each of those 3 questions in your workbook. Once you guys are back, I just want to, say this about mindfulness. It's a skill. And just like any new skill, it takes practice. So I heard this analogy about mindfulness at a workshop last year, and it's really stuck with me and it's resonated with me. And so I want to share it with you guys. Mindfulness is like a newborn puppy. So when you get a newborn puppy, you might place it down in front of you and you tell it to sit and stay. And it's going to run off in one direction. So you go and you pick it up and you bring it back and you tell it to sit and stay. And then it's going to run off in the other direction. And that's exactly what our brains and our minds do. We ask our brain, okay, focus on my breathing. And what's going to happen? All of a sudden, you're going to notice, oh, why am I thinking about what I'm going to eat for dinner tonight? But that's normal. Your brain is going to do that. My brain does that. And I've been practicing mindfulness for a few years now. And actually what mindfulness really is just noticing when the brain gets distracted, when the brain loses focus, and gently and non-judgmentally bringing it back to what we want to be focusing on over and over again for as long as we're practicing that mindfulness exercise for. And so when you're practicing this, it's really helpful to take a non-judgmental and a curious stance. There's no right or wrong. It's just tuning in and being curious about our present experience and our present feelings and our present thoughts. The last technique that I want to leave with you guys, and it's outlined pretty well in your workbook, is something called progressive muscle relaxation. This is a method that helps relieve muscle tension. And in progressive muscle relaxation, or PMR for short, what we do is we tense a group of muscles as we breathe in, and then relax them as we breathe out. And we work on our muscles in a certain order. And when our body is physically relaxed, it's hard to feel anxious. And what happens is the more we practice this, the more we can be aware of, oh, you know what, I'm tensing my shoulders right now. I'm going to relax that. Or, oh, my jaw is tensed right now. I'm going to relax that. So again, it's outlined in the workbook. It gives you some muscle groups and it takes you through it step by step. But for those of you that are interested, I thought we would end today with a progressive muscle relaxation exercise that I'll lead you guys through. There's a ton of resources on the web. The Anxiety Canada page has some really nice recordings as well for you to listen to. But I find it's just helpful to have it be guided for the first couple times that we're doing this. So I'm gonna stop my share with you guys, and I'm gonna ask that you just find a comfortable position on the floor or in your chair, but I find it's best if we're able to lie down and to fully relax. So I want you guys to allow your attention to focus only on your body. If you begin to notice your mind wandering, just bring it back gently to the muscle that we've been working on. Take a nice relaxed breath through your belly and exhale slowly. Again, as you breathe, notice your stomach rising and your lungs filling with air. As you exhale, imagine the tension already being released and flowing out of your body. Feel your body already relaxing. As we go through each step, remember to keep breathing. Now let's begin. Tighten the muscles in your forehead by raising your eyebrows as high as you can and hold. And release, feeling that tension fall away. Now smile widely, feeling your mouth and cheeks tense, and hold. And release, appreciating the softness in your face. Next, tighten your eye muscles by squinting your eyelids tightly shut, and hold, and release. Gently pull your head back as if to look at the ceiling. Hold for about 5 seconds and release, feeling the tension melting away. Feel the weight of your relaxed head and your neck sink. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Letting go of all the stress. Now tightly, but without straining, clench your fists and hold this position. Hold and release. Now flex your biceps and feel all that built up tension, and hold and release, feeling that limpness in your arms. Breathe in and breathe out. Now tighten your triceps by extending your arms out and locking your elbows. And hold and release. Now lift your shoulders up as if you could touch your ears and hold for about 5 seconds. And quickly release, feeling that heaviness. Tense your upper back by pulling your shoulders back and trying to make your shoulder blades touch. And hold and release. Tighten your chest by taking a deep breath in, hold, and exhale, blowing out all that tension. Now tighten the muscles in your stomach by sucking in, and hold, and release. Just noticing how that feels. Gently arc your lower back and hold for about 5 seconds. And release. See if you can feel the limpness in your upper body, letting go of the tension and the stress. And just relax, remembering to breathe. I want us to now tighten our butt and hold for about 5 seconds. And release, imagining your hips falling loose. Tighten your thighs by pressing your knees together, as if you were trying to hold a penny between them. And hold, and release. Now flex your feet, pulling your toes towards you and feeling the tension in your calves. And hold, and release, feeling the weight of your legs sinking down. Now curl your toes under and tense your feet. And hold, and release. Feel the weight of your entire relaxed body. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. You guys are ready. You can open your eyes if you've closed them. Bring your awareness back into the room. I just want to thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.